by tonight. I appreciate it. All right. I am Michael Curtis. I live right near the University of Connecticut. I was born and raised in Waltham. I was born in Cambridge, actually, and raised in Waltham, and met my wife to be my senior year at the University of Connecticut and never left. I spent an awful lot of time still in Massachusetts going back. I've had an awful lot of work here over the years. I'm a practicing environmental engineer. We couldn't get it right, so I kept going back to school. And in a previous life where I worked with Kurt Smith, who you're going to hear from later, I headed up a 350-person engineering construction company. I was executive VP there for strategy and development and whatnot. And I left there 6.5 years ago, and through, not a linear path, I'm here tonight. Kurt brought me in to work with this group here, and I'm very, very excited to be bringing this project to Charlton tonight. Right? And so with that, we're going to run through it. It's a relatively brief presentation, so we would like to run through it, and we're here for the duration relative to questions and answers at the end of that, if that works for you all. So we'll run through it. We have, for anyone who, we brought 12 copies. Kurt is perhaps the best, in his previous life was the best IT person I ever met, and I mean that, and I've met some good ones, and somehow printed 12 black and white copies, which he left back in Connecticut, and I came up here with 12 limited number of copies, which are around. But if you want a copy, PDF version thereof, of what we're doing tonight, give us your email address. We'll get it to you tomorrow morning. Not a problem, okay? If you would like that, piece of cake, we're going to be giving it to the town. But if you'd like something that on your own emails, or have at it, just let us know, okay? And we'll make that happen without a problem. So the company is Fourscore. It is a limited liability company, Massachusetts-based. There are 4 members, soon to be 5. I am the 5th. I am the managing member thereof. With me tonight is Dan Glissman, an attorney from Prince LaBelle. Kurt Smith, who former IT, now business development, primarily in cannabis service for a company called Fuss & O'Neill out of Manchester, Connecticut. And there are other partners. This gentleman is going to be with us tomorrow night. We're at the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night, who is an architect, and will explain what we're about. So we really started with Kurt's roots in the medical field, and it's, we are a customer-focused establishment. We want to provide a quality product to people within the bounds of the laws that exist in the state today. Unlike other groups, every group that we've experienced, we are not driven by an investment group from afar. We are 5 practicing professionals in the field. I have a pretty broad expertise in things organic, nutrient, energy related stuff. I'm doing big things in nutrient and organics, recycles these days that are pretty innovative stuff. Kurt is probably working on more square footage of cannabis development nationwide than perhaps anyone else. Perhaps, don't know that answer for a fact. Dan has sat as much square footage as Kurt has for a different group of clients, mostly on the legal front. And Matthew McGeorge, who will be here tomorrow night, is an architect in the same kind of space. We're an expert-driven group who is bringing a project here. And as I say, we're practicing professional engineering, architecture, legal, energy. Our guesstimates, we didn't sit down and tabulate this, but we have authored over 1 million square feet of grow, dispensary, manufacturing space in the cannabis industry today. Something like that on a nationwide basis, some awfully big projects around. We know what we're talking about, and we're bringing this, we're bringing this project to you. We've got a lot of very good answers for questions you may have, we hope. All right, Kurt, right there. All right, I've known Kurt for 20 years now, something like that. We had a very, he was working with us, as an IT person where I was executive VP. Through his design expertise, we have really, his company has taken off as one of the premier groups in the Northeast and maybe the nation. Matt McGeorge will be with us tomorrow night as an architect in the same space. They've collaborated on this point, I'm guessing, between 1 and 2 dozen projects with various clients throughout the region and nation. Myself, myself, you know, this is obvious. Come on. Yeah, I had a couple of advanced degrees in engineering. This is the best I can do. Okay.
All right.
Here we go. Stay. All right. So, yeah. So anyway, myself. This is obviously taken a few years back, as you can see. You know, but I like to. You know, it's where I'm at now. So it's where my brain's at. You know. And Dan is an attorney working in Prince LaBelle. We're all founders, you know, we're members. Dan is the corporate counsel, compliance director. I'm the managing member of the group. I've got a lot of project management experience over the years, and can also, you know, I can sell pretty well as it relates to bringing in investment dollars. The proposed facility, this is very important to the whole discussion tonight. It's a 20,000 square foot facility. It exists. We are repurposing it for high production cannabis. It has nominally 30 to 50 parking spots depending upon how it's lined. We are proposing probably no more than 1,000 or 1,500 square feet of what I'll call a bump out, where air handling is going to be on the outside. We're taking this now vacant building and repurposing it. And it's going to consume far more power than it's consumed in the past. It's going to have a whole thing, a series of things, but given our expertise, I can braggadociously say that you know, this is going to be one of the premier engineered cannabis sites in the Northeast and perhaps the nation. We are aligned with the absolute top end as it relates to hardware and mechanical, and this is going to be a showpiece inside of what we're doing. There's no trees coming down. There's no curb cuts. We are proposing a small bump out in the back for air handling equipment. You know, there's a whole series of things we're going to get into on security, about consumption on site. Signage obviously is going to be in accordance with all applicable regulations. You know, we're going to have that. It's industrial zoned at this point. It sits on Route 20 next to Zorba's Pizza. Okay? Modest traffic at the site certain times of day, and you know, we're bringing people into it over the course of the day. I don't know why this loves to go two things, but it does, so I'm going to be much more tender. Our proposal is 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is for the dispensary facility, because we're going to have three different facilities inside there, three different functions inside of there. One is going to be cultivation, probably 3/4 of the building. Some is going to be manufacturing, and some of it's going to be a dispensary. I'm going to show you where that's going to be. We're going to be creating nominally 20 positions, something thereabouts. Those 20 positions will be preferentially sourced locally because it makes all the sense in the world to do that. We're projecting as many, but probably not more than 200 visits daily. That's a projection. It's not a hard number because these data are just, you know, the law passed July 1, these data are just showing up. Right? There really is not a lot of hard engineering science behind that projection. And we'll be selling inside of the dispensary, which I'm going to show you where it is, you know, dried flower, a concentrate, infused products, some edibles on the far end of the facility. See if I got it right. Just a little bit of Photoshop work on the existing building. This is what it's going to look like going west on Route 20. We're going to have our logo up on top, our brand. Entrance will be this way, you know, and you know, the dispensary door, and I'm going to run through that in about 1 sec. All right. Again, looking at it from the outside, just a few plans from the architect. There's no cuts envisioned in the building. We're not cutting into it. We're not growing onto it. We're not doubling its size. We're using the square footage that's there with a minor bump out for air handling. From 2,000 foot, this is what it looks like. Entry. We're going to be putting in a sewer line. We're going to be tying into natural gas. That'll be our energy of choice. We're going to be probably upgrading the electric service to the place, I'm guessing, because we're going to need a fair amount of power. And you know, beyond that, those will all be street level improvements. You know, the somewhere out here, we're going to be coming with more formal plans with applications. We'll be putting a trigen system or a cogen system where we'll be generating both heat and coof and power. You know, using gas as the fuel that does that. And as I detailed, you know, we are looking to have this be one of the premier engineered sites in the Northeast, if not the nation. The building right now is vacant. Floor plan, pretty unexciting. This is the office space inside of the existing building, and please remember that because that's what we're proposing to turn into the dispensary. If you're studied in things like lean manufacturing, which I used to be at one time, the product flow is this way. It goes one direction. Employees come in the back door. The dispensary doors are here. There are emergency exits, obviously, but in general, there's one entry access for employees to come in. Product cultivation is here. Material flows that way. Manufacturing is the far end, and sales are on the far end of that. And we will be working with that. This is, as I say, employee entrances and exits, and dispensary entry and exit, as you can see from the western side of the building. Right? The proposed site for the air handling add-on, but that's the extent of it. Right? Not a lot of ferocious outdoor construction. You know, it's just all inside of the building. Dispensary. This is kind of a nirvana shot as it relates to dispensaries. I mean, it really does show very well. This is this is the architect's rendering from a different site that he designed. This is what Matt McGeorge designed for Healthwise, I believe. I'm not positive who the client was. It doesn't matter, yeah. You know. And you know, we're looking to create space like this inside of the facility. I am now going to pass, and Dan is going to continue on. You know, we're about halfway through, and at the end of this, we've got all, as I detailed, all kinds of time for questions. Okay, so that you can carry this forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, everybody, again, thank you very much for coming. As Mike mentioned, my name is Dan Glissman. I'm an attorney and I'm working with the Fourscore team. I've been working in the cannabis space pretty much since its inception here in Massachusetts. Participated in the licensing of the first facility in the city of Boston. Recently, my clients were just awarded the first recreational license for adult use in Massachusetts. You know, my firm has collaborated on a number of different projects across the state. So very much involved in the space and eager to you know, see good projects like this and work with a great team. So I'm just going to touch a little bit about sort of the operating policies and procedures that the company will have. You know, just to sort of step back a little bit, I want to talk sort of about why we're here. So part of the state licensing process requires that we host a community meeting. So we're here, you know, satisfying that requirement, and this really kicks off our project, and it's the start of sort of our soliciting this project with you guys and members of the community, and sort of taking feedback and hoping to come out with a better project at the other end. I'll just dig right in, and as Mike said, this is a rendering of what we would like to propose here at our facility. Obviously, this is the front of the house, if you will, the actual consumer side, but this is, you know, pretty typical for what you're going to see in a dispensary here in Massachusetts. Right now, there are about 30 medical facilities open and operating. The first license for adult use was just recently issued. So they'll be coming online. There's 60 applications in the state for adult use right now, and so they'll be coming from, you know, all over the state. But you'll see, you know, a high-end retail finish is the goal for most of these developers. So I want to talk a little bit about the company and the policies and procedures that we'll put in place here. So the cannabis industry in Massachusetts is one of the most heavily regulated industries in Massachusetts. And the part of the state licensing process, they're going to review and really scrutinize our operating policies and procedures. Everything from how we grow the product to how we package it, to how we label it, to, you know, how we transport it. And so, you know, we just want to touch on a few of the points that are sort of important and critical to the neighbors and the community, and the first being nuisance abatement. You know, what do I mean when I talk about nuisance? You know, people lining up outside, on-site consumption, odor, disposal, proper disposal. So our company will have, you know, detailed policies that will define and determine exactly how all those processes will occur. We won't allow loitering on the property or on-site consumption. Obviously, will be prohibited. And we have to prepare our products safely and in a sanitary environment. We'll obviously dispose of everything properly, and everything is going to be heavily regulated by the state. Again, we'll have an odor mitigation system in place that will help to alleviate any odor coming from the cultivation side of the project. We'll have a very extensive security protocol in place. I've worked on a number of security manuals for various companies. They're lengthy, and they really go through all the details of operating this facility safely and securely. This is one of the biggest points that the state is really pressing on. From the medical side, no one could come in unless they had a medical card. They had to be verified at the door, or within a man-trap area, so that the door actually into the building wouldn't open until the door behind them was closed and their identification was properly verified. It'll work the same way for the adult use, obviously only accepting folks over 21, unless of course you're a medical patient and you have a parent or a caregiver with you, or you have a prescription and you're allowed to access it under the age of 21. I won't bore you with very detailed description of the security policies, but there'll be cameras everywhere, and law enforcement officials will have access to those cameras. There'll be emergency buttons available to all the employees should anything happen. We'll work very closely with the town to make sure that the fire department is comfortable running their drills through the building, and make sure they know what to do in the case of an emergency. So again, these are really very vetted, and they're looked closely at by the state. For one thing I will mention also is that employees, they go through a rigorous background check. They all have to be over 21. The state, will vet them initially, whomever we have on board, before they give us a license, and then going forward, we will, vet each employee. We'll have to maintain their background checks, and they'll have to go through core certification reports, things like that. So, we have to only bring on folks that are of a good caliber enough to warrant this responsibility. The security system, like I talked about, I'm not going to get into too much detail of it, but involves a lot of cameras and man traps and things like that to just ensure that the product is all being properly tracked and properly identified. Every plant that's grown is tagged and identified, and when it moves from one phase to the next in terms of growth, it gets identified and updated in the state's systems. This is all managed through sort of a master state database, but there's going to be visibility into every step of the process. You've got to weigh the products as soon as they're complete and ready for packaging and shipping, so that there's no way that they can be stolen or removed, and if they are, it's all identified, and proper security procedures will be followed from there. Diversion prevention, again, like I was just referring to, the state will track everything that we do, where the product goes, what retailers, if we end up wholesaling to other facilities. Any packaging is required to have these two logos that the state has developed, not safe for kids, and contains THC if that is the case. So this is sort of the state packaging requirement in a nutshell, if you will. We'll have a more detailed explanation of what the actual product is and sort of what the qualities of the product will be. Certainly, we'll go through extensive training for our employees. We'll require that everyone knows and understands that they have the right to deny anyone's sales, similar to a liquor establishment. You can cut somebody off. You can say no, we don't think you're capable of purchasing this at the moment. So again, very, very thorough. And quickly, the community benefits. We're going to be bringing in up to 20 jobs. We are going to be entering into a host community agreement with the town, which will allow us to give a percentage of our gross revenues to the municipality. There's also, I believe, the 3% tax, which is more of a sales tax on the product. So, there will be a benefit to the town for having a retail facility in town. Certainly, we're also, interested in being good corporate citizens, making charitable donations to causes that, are good and that we approve of, and we're hoping to be, and eager to be good citizens and corporate sponsors in Charlton. I think so. Just as one other piece, sort of on the project itself, I've put together a bit of a timeline as to the typical lifespan of a project like this. In our case, we began the search for the right property in January of 2018, so earlier this year, and it takes a couple of months of working with property owners and vetting locations and hoping to find the right place. We've found a great building that's currently vacant, and we're happy to be filling that underutilized space. And we have a great relationship with the property owner. We have a lease for 5 years with a possible 5-year extension and an option to buy the building in the future. So we're very excited to be where we are. But then so that we would say it takes about 3 months, and then you really kick into the municipal and community outreach portion, and sort of where we start doing our homework, and presenting before you folks and developing policies and procedures for the company, designing the facility as you saw. Some of you have copies of the plans. Identifying how we want the process to flow, things like that. And so for that we're talking 6 months. And then you're looking at also, as part of the local permitting process, the negotiating and getting approved for a host community agreement here in Charlton, and then still working with the planning board currently for a special permit for this use in the industrial district. And then once we sort of complete that process, then we can move to the state. And we'll also most likely be running both the local permitting and the state licensing process in conjunction once we get to the stage of having a host community agreement approved by the town. We can move forward with the state licensing. So we'll run those two projects on parallel tracks. And so the state licensing process, it's a new agency. It's the Cannabis Control Commission. It's going to be regulating ultimately both medical and recreational cannabis in the state of Massachusetts. So we're not really sure how long the process is going to take at this point, but we're projecting, anywhere from 4 to 6 months for pushing through the state licensing process. And then, so that really would bring us to January of 2019, where we would hopefully have all permits in hand, and we'd be ready to, start commencing building out our site. And then, I would defer to the engineering team here, but I think, we would be looking at sort of a 9-month construction process and build-out process. Although it's not an extensive build-out for the facility in terms of major, structural changes, there'll be none. There is a lot of, in terms of setting up the appropriate climate to cultivate and produce through agriculture in an industrial building. There's a lot of work that has to go in terms of getting the air quality right and installing all the appropriate lighting and such. So once we get through the construction process, then we can kind of get our final certificate from the state. They have to come back out, look at the whole property, make sure the security cameras are in place that we said they're going to be, test all the systems and such, and then they'll give us their final approval, and then we'll be able to put plants in the ground. And then it's typically a 4-month process once you have plants in the ground before you have product that's going to be ready to sell. And so we think hopefully have doors open in 2020. So it's a long project, even for a small, this is a fairly typical sized project for what I've worked on in Massachusetts, everywhere from 20,000 to 80,000 or 100,000 square feet. old mill buildings are being converted, or industrial buildings in our case are being converted to this use. It's happening all over the state, but certainly it's a long process and takes some time. But thank you all again very much for coming out this evening. Happy to take questions.
My name is Roger Cloutier, and I live in Poland Road. And forgive my ignorance, because this is a small town and this is all coming at us rather quickly. VGG and you guys and stuff. And we were told, and we're often told wrong, but it was my understanding that you couldn't grow it and sell it in the same building. VGG was saying they were going to have a separate building with a separate access because they couldn't mix the two. And I'm just curious, is it legal to sell out of a grow house? I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So that information was not accurate that we received. Not from you guys, but.
It might have just been presented differently too.
Sure. And
no, they had said you can't put them together, but
sure.
Again,
you absolutely can.
okay, so there is none. My other question has to do with, and it's rather interesting because VGG is also tapping into the natural gas line. New England is having a difficulty producing electricity. We pay more per kilowatt than anybody else in the 48 lower states. And the problem is we can't get natural gas to generate electricity, and that's why it costs us so much. They gotta bring it in LG, the tankers and stuff like that. And it's New York, and you can't bring electricity down from Canada because Maine won't let them come through, and there's a whole thing about that. I'm just surprised that you guys don't seem to have any trouble being able to tie in, and you're gonna consume a lot of energy. Now, you're a lot smaller, they're 3 million square feet, you guys are tiny by comparison. But that's gonna be quite a.
Sure, I'd like to.
Maybe the engineer could answer that.
I'll speak
I'll
to
defer to the engineering team
So
on that.
just to be clear, I'm not an engineer, so there's
Well,
questions you're gonna ask me that I'm not gonna be able to answer.
Okay.
However, what I can do is, right,
Yeah.
I can speak
Yeah,
to.
he's sitting there.
I can speak to the access to gas. It is a desire of ours to use containerized natural gas, and that would be trucked in, and we would just replace the propane tanks that exist on site with that tank of gas.
So you're not gonna tie into the gas line?
We would love to.
Yeah, you don't have to electric.
And at about $1 million a mile, we
I
could
know.
bring gas right to the building. However,
I know.
it is very difficult to do so, and the utilities, first one of the utilities, either Eversource or National Grid, would have to
Yeah.
get involved,
Yeah.
and so when they do, they would help bring that gas line.
So I'm just saying, that's a hurdle you folks are gonna probably have to
So
overcome.
it is, and so we understand the power infrastructure in New England is shrinking, and that is why we would like to use a trigen system to give ourselves a little better economy on the electricity. But
And so you're gonna have emissions from that, obviously, because
absolutely.
you can't burn natural gas, but.
No, and we've worked on these trigen systems quite a bit, and the emissions are absolutely regulated by the state, and we work on air quality permitting all the time. So any emissions from a fuel source like that would be mitigated.
And by the way, I live clear across the town, so I think the spot you picked was great for me. However, having said that, no, for me personally, but having said that, being on Route 20, because we do have the brewery there, which, hey, they do a great business, they make a wonderful product. That's becoming a real tough, there's been a lot of car accidents there, and, I know you guys are an LLC and you're leasing the building, which is all smart. Because if you guys get sued for something, you can just fold up and that's that. I mean, well, you don't own the building, I mean, you gotta limit your liability. And I'm not saying it's gonna happen, and I'm not wishing it, but that's also a rather difficult location. It's ideal for me, because it's on Route 20. But traffic-wise, I just wanna let you guys, everybody here probably knows it's a tough place to get in and out of, as Zorba will tell you, in any business on the highway. And yeah, you live there, right? So you probably, it's probably tough. So some of you.
I mean, just to give you a clue, on
I'm
average,
just-
when the brewery's
I'll let somebody
open,
else say.
we have 20 to 30 cars a day turn around in our driveway.
And that was gonna be my question too, is you're gonna be right at the end of my street, and
Yes.
we can't even get out of Sampson Road when, especially on a weekend, because we have people who are cutting from the Pike and taking Route 20, and then we also have brewery traffic. And then, another one of my concerns with traffic is that we're going Treehouse is a destination brewery. People are coming from all over the country.
But
So we're gonna get people who are coming here for the beer and are also gonna wanna stop in to see you guys to get their pot while they're here. So.
I fully envision that we'll be in front of state traffic control, and they're going to come up with rules, on how we can access Route 20. You see some of it at that treehouse in place, and I imagine we're going to see very
No, we can't.
similar.
Treehouse doesn't have squat for control.
They have no
Okay, so
control, it's
if
been
they
a
went,
year we've been.
if they went and they had a result, that result sucks.
So I can speak technically to, how Route 20 is managed. It's a state route, and DOT issues permits for proposed businesses. There will be a lot of vetting that goes into the calculation of traffic prior to any approvals being given. So what I would say is that the percentages of traffic that we're talking about here fall well below the threshold of what would be considered an issuance for permit. So I don't want to get into the details because we're working on all those numbers right now. Like Mike spoke to the presentation earlier, it's very early in the industry in this state to calculate how many people are actually going to show up. It certainly is in an area of town that is getting a lot of traffic. We're happy to contribute to helping mitigate, and it is absolutely our responsibility before even filing for permit to do so. So, we are obligated to, and we're happy to.
Questions, sir?
Gerard Russell from Old Worcester Road. Quick question, I'm gathering from what you said tonight that you have not been in negotiation with town officials?
Well, so we, Dan, maybe you can speak to the point that we're at with the town.
Yeah, we've submitted a host agreement to the town, and we're working through that process. We'll be with the Board of Selectmen on their agenda tomorrow night, just as an introductory meeting. We hope to be back before them again in August, after we've had a chance to vet our host agreements.
All right, so the board then has not voted on an agreement for your company?
They have not, no.
They have not, okay,
No, sir.
thank you.
And there's a bylaw that's been passed in the town. It's all up in the air because there's a lot of controversy around it, where they restricted to 2 dispensaries for medical, 2 for recreational, and from what I gather, unlimited grow houses, from what I gather. Again, the information is hard to disseminate. If you're just a voter, you're trying to sort through all of this stuff, it's rather difficult. Is that any concern of yours at all as to the number that they're allowing? I mean,
Well, we have to defer to the town, and it's really up to the planning board and, the officials in town to determine, who's eligible and not. So, we're focused on our project. We want to present a great project. That's our goal here, and, we'll leave it to the municipality and you folks to determine, our whether or not we go forward.
I think I'd like to clarify.
Please.
Please.
Hi,
Thanks,
for
Robin.
those of you who don't know me, I'm Robin Craig with the Town Administrator of Charlton. A while ago, in March, both Fourscore and BGG had submitted, contacted us and said they had an interest in coming to Charlton to build a marijuana grow and retail facility. They both even gave some money to offset legal issues. They were the third, so first came Healthwise, and as you know, they have been permitted, they have a host agreement. BGG came in next, and the board was negotiating with them, and as you know, they voted to approve the host agreement, and then also reconsidered after people wanted more information. When we found out that there was going to be a zoning article, my conversations with Fourscore stopped. I basically told them that I wasn't sure what was going to happen with zoning, and wanted everything to go on hold until we figured out, 1, what was going to happen with BGG if it was going forward, 2, what was going to happen with the zoning article. The zoning article was proposed for 3 retail and grow facilities, so that we would be able to move forward with the 3 applicants that we had in front of us. Town meeting decided that they wanted to limit it to 2. My conversation with Fourscore after the town meeting was, sorry guys, but the town meeting has limited it to 2, and there will not be a 3rd. I'm a little surprised at some of the presentation I'm hearing here tonight, because I was under the understanding that they had dropped the retail component and they were just looking for the grow. So, kind of to figure out how many you have, so you have 2 retail, Healthwise, and BGG have been approved for retail. For growth, Healthwise is not doing growth, so there's 1 open growth permit. And this is the way that I'm looking at it, and this is the way I explained it to Fourscore. Fourscore came back to me and said, no, well, that's not really it, and I'm just gonna try and be very transparent about our conversations, because you see that, you're asking about them. They did argue or try to propose that the language in the article said special permit, and since Healthwise and BGG would be exempt and didn't have a special permit, that there were 2 permits. And I told them that it was my belief that town meeting limited and had the intention of only 2, retail and grow. And that when he asked about the special permit, my comment was, if one of those goes away, you're the next in line, and the process would be a special permit. But in my opinion, and I don't believe that the selectmen have gone forward and had a discussion on how to actually implement that. But I think that given the spirit of the vote under Article 27, that the Board of Selectmen has the ability to do host agreements, and that they would honor those limits too. So if you guys, my last conversation with you, Kurt, was that you were dropping the retail and you were coming forward and wanted to go before the Board of Selectmen on the grow. So could you answer me the question of why you have retail back in here?
So, do you want to answer, or you want?
I think we feel that we want to leave it up to the town to make the determination as to what the appropriate order of operations in terms of ordering or determining which facilities are counted in what order, and frankly how the zoning applies to each prospective facility. We're not in a position to make an opinion on that matter either way. Certainly, we would love to propose a retail, sort of the full gamut of projects that or services that a cannabis establishment can provide. And as part of the state licensing process, we need to sort of cover our bases and make sure, if in the event that, as Robin said, another group were to drop out, or another license were to open up, if you will, we would want to make sure that we've presented everything and proposed everything to the municipality, so that we don't have to come back.
Would you go ahead if it's just a grow?
We would.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
We would. I want everyone in the room to understand, and particularly our neighbors, okay, prospective neighbors. I spent a lot of time up here. I got married at the is it the public house down the street here? I go to the brewery all the time. Okay, so we're not looking to force our way into town. Okay, and we understand. It just happened that we submitted our proposals to the town at the same time as Valley Green Grow. So we've done a lot of this. And I've seen in other towns where some people come to town and they're proposing to do certain things with their business, and it doesn't work out for one reason or another. Either the site's not right, or there's a regulation they overlooked, or another business just doesn't have the funding to get the projects going. So we look at the retail portion of this business as an opportunity for ourselves, obviously, but also for the town to make some money. So we're happy to be in town, growing only, and without the retail component. We've discussed this with our landlord, we've discussed this with Robin. She's being very transparent with you guys, and that's how we want this process to be moving forward. I would be happy to answer any technical questions about what's actually going to happen inside this thing, what's going to be involved in our planning, and how we would propose our business moving forward. I hope that you know, the technicalities of how this is permitted and the zoning in town, you know, it's going to take a little while. We're in the middle of the summer. There's fewer meetings this summer, and I understand this is a hot topic. And it was an unfortunate scenario for us that we coincidentally submitted at the same time. So, and I appreciate these questions. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Zareski, and I want to get back to the building and find out some information. We have hours here, 8 to 8, 7 days a week. Is that correct?
That's what we're proposing currently.
And how many workers would that be?
So, so in this portion of the facility, in the manufacturing and cultivation section, we believe we need about 10 employees, 2 in the
Only 10 employees?
well, 2 in the processing and 8 in the cultivation, and some of those positions may be part-time initially, because when you first start these facilities, these rooms aren't all floor plants, so it's going to take us a while to get up to speed. But then we believe we need about 10 people between the administrative office support and the retail space.
Now, how do you do that? 12-hour shift?
So the hours that you see in the presentation, I'll let Dan speak to this a little bit, and you guys probably understand this, right? When somebody's producing or proposing a project like this, okay, there's the law and then there's what actually gets approved, right? So we are allowed by law to be open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, if there is some characteristic of that is not okay with this town, we would be happy to work with the town to come up with what they believe are reasonable hours for the operation of this facility. And there may be some facility staff that are in the building beyond the hours of the retail operation of the facility.
Right, the 8 to 8 is primarily for the retail portion of the company.
Production would be the swing shift.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming as necessary.
I'm sorry?
Plants don't stop growing at night.
No, sir.
No, they
Also,
don't.
another question, you say you had about 200 visitors, you're expecting 200 visitors daily on the average. Now, is this people buying, or is these trailer trucks coming in?
No, so in the state of Massachusetts, they do allow you to, as a grower, you know, you can sell a certain amount of your product that would go into a retail store to other producers of in the area who are short, and there's rules related to that, but
And other retail stores as well, you know, if you're a grower.
Any shipment of products in or out of this facility would happen in a secured van or box
Right.
truck, would not be a large 18-wheeler.
Right.
In fact, most of that activity will happen by the time construction is done. It will be very seldom that we're taking large shipments on tractor trailers to the facility on a regular basis.
On the average, there'd be what, something like 18 trucks going in and out of there?
Well, everything will be done, all the transportation of the product is done using unmarked vehicles.
Much smaller.
most-
What about everything else that comes to the building?
So-
The fertilizers, the containers, the lighting, the wiring, everything
This-
else you guys gotta bring in.
So this would not be a scenario where you're gonna see dozens of trucks coming in and out of the facility. The greenhouse suppliers that we work with, they'll be bringing, we're gonna reuse a lot of stuff.
Right.
We're gonna be washing pots. We're gonna be, yes, we'll be disposing of the growing medium and plant waste. Some of that can be repurposed and composted. But large shipments of things like packaging and stuff like that, it's only gonna come as needed. We're not gonna store a lot of that stuff on site, and so because it's a modest-sized facility and a small dispensary, I mean, this town, the numbers that we're looking at these based on a town of 13,000 people, and I understand that particular location in town skews those numbers slightly because you have a lot of people coming from outside the area to come to this region. But you know, this is probably half the size of the facilities that we typically work on, and there's a reason for that. You know, while we do want to provide a quality product for the community and for the people who are going to patronize our business, we're design engineering legal and construction professionals. So for us, this is a little bit of a demonstration of our competency as a team. We do a lot of this across the state. We know a lot of the people who are opening these businesses, and so we see a lot of this. So like I'm saying, the large amount of traffic coming in and out, that's more for larger facilities, 30, 50, 80, 100,000 square feet. This will be fairly modest.
Trucks, the vast majority are bringing equipment in when we're starting. Okay, after the fact, much smaller.
So there is no plan for this to be a supplier to the dispensaries in Worcester?
No, we're not even decided that we're allowed to have up to 3 recreational and 3 medical dispensaries, and some people have combined those into 3 spaces throughout. We've not planned for expansion at this point.
This is not distribution?
No. This
Well,
is-
certainly just to correct, if
Access.
there's no retail component to this project, then we would be transporting the product to our alternate retail locations. We haven't identified any alternate retail locations at this point. We hope, as Kurt said, to expand to the maximum number of 3 retail stores.
With that though, we can also have another location for a facility.
Right.
So, and in some cases, because of the technicality of these facilities, the security and the staff that you need and all the tracking for the product, sometimes it's easier just to have it all in the same building. So transporting back and forth creates another point of diversion, and so to the extent possible, a lot of companies that we're working with are trying to minimize that.
I have one other question. Is the composting indoor or outdoor?
So the composting is a requirement, so there's 2 ways to look at this. One is that everything that comes out of this facility in terms of plant waste, medium, et cetera, has to be blended and rendered useless, and a state waste company who's got a license has to haul it away. If we were to work on that, Mike has a lot of experience in organic nutrients, and so we're hoping to amend some of our soils on site. If that were possible, we'd be able to reuse some of what we're using.
I'm just aware of the place in Marlboro, that's why I asked.
Yeah, that'd be a goal, but the idea, nitrogen, phosphorus are expensive, and if we can beneficially reuse that, we will.
If you open just a grow house and not a retail store, the 3% that the town gets in taxes on the sale, how does that work? Does that still work?
That is a
I mean,
great
would
question.
you take it to someplace else and you pay the 3%?
That is a great question, and Robin asked me that question, and I told her I would have to talk with Dan about it, and that's a decision as a company that we have to make. The state has allowed a community impact fee of up to 3%, and there are multiple ways that you can get to that arrangement, okay? It certainly puts us in a different position if we are only able to sell wholesale. We're getting less money for our product, and the full retail realization of that price will happen elsewhere.
And so let me just
But we
also
won't
add.
get the 3% of the wholesale price of the marijuana.
Well, so
3%
so the tax, the tax portion of it is taken at the retail level. So the portion that the state collects as part of the sales excise tax will only come through the retail portion. It does not come through there's no wholesaling tax, there's no.
So it's
but-
possible the town will get nothing other than
No,
Well, there's a host,
property tax.
that's not possible.
there's a
because-
host community agreement process, which under the state law, we're allowed to give up to 3% of our gross revenues. The state's being very, just last week, a number of the top state legislators spoke out on this topic, and that they're trying to focus the Cannabis Control Commission on reviewing and approving these agreements themselves, but certainly as part of our program, we are allowed to give up to 3% of our gross revenue as a community impact fee. That community impact fee is supposed to be directly related to the impacts of the town, or that the town will feel from a project like this. So certainly, we're open and eager to
How do you
have that
measure
conversation. Well, it's going to be difficult to measure, and certainly we're not going to know right away. These are all brand new facilities across the state, and we want to be good neighbors, and we want to be good corporate citizens for the town. So that's the most important point I
And
can
your
make.
town administrator drives a hard bargain. She's doing a good job negotiating for you guys.
Come on, you don't build a facility like this and not have an idea of revenue. 3% of what? You're getting
3%, it is 3% of your top line.
What's the
I think
top
he's
line?
asking what the.
What's the top line?
You must have
How much
projected.
did they grow in the building?
If you're looking at wholesale, full tilt, all these rooms are operating at the same time. We would hope we could net somewhere around $8 to $10 million in a full production year. And I can tell you from experience that the projections that everybody sees in these, just because I'm in and out of these facilities all day long, things happen. It's not going to be that perfect number. You can have one whole room go into contamination and have to throw it all out.
Right. And
So-
the testing standards from the state are, extremely high. So if there are metals in the product, you can have to throw away an entire batch. And I think it was some crazy number of, the amount of batches that were thrown out under the medical program in the first 2 years was,
It was significant. There were
over half.
There were
Yeah.
lots of problems, particularly this time of year. It's very difficult. People underestimate the utility and the HVAC that's needed in these buildings to operate properly, and you will see that some of these facilities and these dispensaries will have very little product on their shelf because they run into those problems.
So 250,000 max, 3% of it.
If that's what you're looking for an answer on that number, yes. And on the other hand, if we had that dispensary open, we would hope to see almost twice that in revenue.
And at this time, is the host agreement, that's limited to like 5 years?
It's currently limited to 5 years, that's correct.
What's the projected price change in marijuana for those 5 years? Is that?
So in the state of Colorado, that price goes down significantly, okay? Think about, your grocery store where they're making a very small margin, or like a convenience store. Eventually there's gonna be a lot of these places, and depending on the place that you chose and the community that you struck a deal with, you could be scraping the bottom of the barrel. That's the reality.
Yeah, and also, there are a lot of these facilities underway, either under construction or permitted or already operating in terms of cultivation. So there have been some, numbers that have been thrown out. I know the Boston Globe did a story, I think it was last week, on consultants who are talking about Massachusetts could actually have an overproduction problem with what's already coming down the pipeline. So, it's a new industry, it's a nascent industry. It comes with its risks like any other business does.
This program in particular is going to be slow to roll out. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this time last year, the Department of Public Health projected about 40 of these facilities by July 1st, and there's only 30. So it's been, they've been overwhelmed, and there are quite a few people coming to town. However, okay, or coming into the state rather. I know that coming into this town is a very different topic, so I'm sorry. They're coming into the state, but you'll notice that there's a very limited number of communities that are willing to accept these businesses, and for a lot of different reasons. So there's limited opportunity, and maybe the delay is by design.
Can farming companies import them?
No.
We've not crossed that.
Before we, back to the point
Yep.
of batches going bad and all that, this is why we're engineers. We're heading this high with quality control, mostly on the environmental side of things, looking to minimize those losses, because what's gonna happen as this material gets commoditized is that people can produce the most and least amount of space of those, and least expensively, are gonna be those that survive.
No, it's
And
fair.
prosper.
It's a very reasonable size facility compared to Valley Greenwell. You have 1 million square feet, the burn rate's gonna be high if the price drops. They'll leave a 90-acre facility vacant.
And who the heck wants to locate next door to the
May I?
Well,
You may. You got a question, I'll be back, she's
So
going.
the renovations to the building and the 1,000 square foot bump out is Fourscore funding these renovations? Is the landlord doing it? Are you investing in that?
oh no, yeah, we
Yeah.
are.
Oh, absolutely.
We are.
How much are you investing in that?
So, this facility will cost between $4 and $6 million to develop and build out.
Thank you.
Sure.
You've got they have batches, everything that goes out of here in terms of trash goes to an incinerator. We're gonna, everybody around Hillsbury gonna be high and this stuff, I know, it's funny, but it's a fair question.
It
No,
is.
it's actually, I mean,
The
And
disposal.
the reality is, let's face it, you're gonna have stuff that's, that's not necessarily contaminated, you're gonna throw away. That stuff's gonna eventually get burned. That's what we do with this stuff, so.
They mix it with soils, and they don't, as far as I know, I don't think that the state has approved, I probably have to check, but I don't think the state has approved the process to incinerate the product. You have to, mix it and so that it's not usable in the form that it's in, whether that be, an oil or the flour. You have to mix it with the dirt and whatever.
And where does
So-
it go?
then it goes to a waste disposal
It goes
facility,
to
just like
It does.
another.
It goes, so the different types of waste you're gonna have coming out of this building is you're gonna have the regular trash that, you throw away in an office waste bin, okay? And then back from this wall back, you're gonna have, dirty processes that happen every crop, and everything, and I mean everything, is weighed. So when the plant comes down, that thing gets hung and weighed, okay? When you take all of the flower off of the plant, that is also weighed. There's gonna be a fair amount of trim and leaves that come off of that. That is weighed. These things, the product is weighed so many different times. You have to use software to keep track of it. And when it comes out of the facility, it for the most part, it comes out of the same place where the waste bins and the traditional trash that will come out of the dispensary go into the dumpster. It will be in a locked area, okay? And the cannabis waste will also go into a locked dumpster. Now, the differentiation between the two types of waste are all of the general solid waste and then anything considered hazardous materials, which could be expended plant material that has solvent in it or failed recipes in the laboratory, things like that. So, so you have two waste haulers coming to the site. One is hazardous waste and one is your traditional recycling and solid waste.
Bottom line is, where does the hazardous go?
So the
The regular goes to the
Well,
incinerator,
so-
where does the hazardous go?
So the hazardous waste materials go to the same place, any industrial waste producer. So in the state of Massachusetts, you are tech, you're the environmental guy.
Yeah, special waste facility, either containment, there certainly is at times incineration. Increasingly, we're seeing compost, bacterial breakdown these materials as an enviable alternative in the end. And it has everything to do, I can't answer relative to who the hauler is and where he, she brings these materials, but I can certainly find out where several might go right now in the state. I mean, I've seen them, a variety of outlets. There's no one answer to your question. I've seen certain things incinerated in very, very high-end incinerators. I've seen a lot of things land applied inside contained cells. So that as a detail, I'm not trying to evade the question, but there's no one specific. But it wouldn't go to a general use trash incinerator, where the air control is not perhaps what it needed to be vis-a-vis your concern there. I don't think that's a viable outlet. Okay? Yes, sir.
My name's Ken Howard, I'm on Hollister Road. I've got a few, if you don't mind my asking.
Oh, please.
I'm a little confused sitting here. Are you guys in McGeorge building this for the owner, or are you for the owners?
We are.
You're the owners.
We are the
Yes,
owners.
sir.
And we
So
will.
you'll be here, you won't disappear when it's built?
We'll
No,
no,
that's a differentiator.
and the permits that are given by the town are given to us, okay? And to renew that permit, we have to be here.
Another thing I'm a little confused on, maybe I missed something here. When you talk about retail, and you talk about if the town won't let you do recreational, well, are the people gonna be coming here for medicinal?
So, so the dispensary, if we do not have a dispensary, then no retail customers will come to the site.
Right.
Recreational or medicinal?
Right.
Or medicinal, and the traffic counts will be, well,
20 people a day.
20 people a day.
But if we have a dispensary, then it'll service both avenues, medical and
If it went
adult.
that route, can you park enough cars there? If a lot of people are coming to your place without backing up on Route 20?
We can, and so, so currently here, we've got 8 or 9 spaces out in front, and we only anticipate needing, the parking area back here for deliveries. There's an at-grade loading dock here. There's also one here. Our proposal, which will be submitted to the town this week, would add double the parking spaces. So we're thinking somewhere between 35 and 50. So we're thinking about that, double the parking spaces that we need for our employees.
And how much water do you estimate it's gonna use per day?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because this facility will use a little less water than a typical facility its size. Mike and one of our other partners is actually, you know, I can't wait to put all the things into this building that we want to implement, because we will be conserving water through recirculation. We've done this before for our clients. We've done this in industrial agricultural greenhouses. So we know how to take, we're hoping to connect to city water because it's closer to what we would want the pH and the qualities of the water to be. There is a well on site, and if you look back here, and I'll get to the question of how many gallons in a second, I just want to talk a little bit about this.
I don't know, is there any water on 20 in front of this building?
There is. So now in the back of this building, there's a 20,000 gallon tank which is required for fire protection. That tank is full, and George, I think, was forced to install that when he expanded the facility in the interior out to the back.
The sprinkler system.
Right.
Right.
And so 20,000 gallons. You know, some facilities can consume that much in a day. We're not proposing to do that. We're on the lower end. We're thinking we're somewhere around 5,000 gallons a day, and we'll reuse that water once before it goes back into the sewer, which will be treated if necessary, going back to the wastewater facility. So that is not a burden on the town. That's something that we handle. We work with, you know, Department of Public Works to manage just like Treehouse did. They have a certain amount of water they use, and you know, there might even be a period where we calibrate, so that we understand how the water is what needs to be done to the water as it goes back, and how that's working over time.
And that's on town sewer?
It is on town sewer.
Yes.
It already is on town sewer. Right.
Yeah.
And another thing I was just wondering, maybe you don't know, if the event happened, whether it's Valley Green or even a place this small, if there was a bad fire in that, or explosion or whatever, if the place was out of control burning, how dangerous is that to anybody who lives near it, or driving by or on a Mass Pike?
No more dangerous than anybody's house burning, right? So,
It's pot.
Well,
It's fumes.
so sure, there are, but long before a fire like that, I mean, unless it's a big explosion in the building, which I can't imagine unless the propane tank blew or something like that. You know, the whole building is sprinklered. Fire protection is actually, besides security, probably one of the things that the state cares most about. Diversion too, but you know, we've worked with fire chiefs all over the state to make sure that the fire department thinks a lot about this before they get involved, and I'm sure Chief Knopf will look at this, and he'll ask for a tour of the existing facility. He'll also ask for a tour once everything's up and running. He wants to know in that floor plan where he can send guys in and how they're going to work. And in some cases, there's so much stuff in these facilities. We put repeaters in for their guys to have constant communication around the entire property. So fire safety and life safety are right next to security and diversion in terms of priority.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Another question, when a person comes in to buy some marijuana, they have to have a card, they have to be 21 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens once they leave and they decide to sell it?
That's like going to the package store and somebody buying a 6-pack for a teenager on a Friday night. It is, you know, it is treated in the same way. It is absolutely not.
Let me jump in also. I think the pricing that these facilities, I mean, the idea of obviously legalizing cannabis is to drive out the black market.
Right.
And you know, we're seeing that effect in some of the states that have legalized programs. You know, we're seeing that teen usage has gone down in states like Colorado, despite legalization, by I think like 20%. But you know, the pricing that we'll set will be comparable, so that it won't make sense for someone to come in and buy our product and then go and sell it on the street, on the black market.
question.
So are the edibles licensed separately in the dispensaries and the dry products?
There are effectively 4 licenses for any facility like this that will provide all the processes. So you have the cultivation, and then you have the production, which is a separate license, and that would be converting the flower into the oil, and then creating the marijuana infused products, whatever that may be, tinctures, edibles, things like that. So yes, it's a separate license. You'll also have a transportation license to be able to bring it to another store should you wholesale, and then you'll have the retail license.
So are some townships limiting their selling of edibles versus just the dried plants in their dispensaries?
No, not that I've seen.
There's a lawsuit. There was,
They're trying to-
West Bridgewater, they were they tried to not allow edibles, but I think
Yeah.
that's a thing.
We've not had that scenario in any of the projects that we've worked
Right,
on.
I haven't seen it, and frankly, I haven't looked into the Cape,
Towards
the Cape project either.
So that you guys understand, they did lower the limit of recreational products in terms of cannabinoid that you can have in the product. So a medical patient can come in and ask for, 100 milligrams of THC, whereas a recreational user is not allowed to purchase more than a certain amount. So that is limited in some capacity.
If you don't mind my asking, you keep talking about all the projects and everything, all these projects you've worked on. Do you four own other projects, or is this
No.
your first
No.
time
No,
being together?
It is.
On a project?
That's correct.
It is.
well, I mean, we've worked together on,
Right.
other
Collaborating
projects
on a lot of
as,
projects
First
over
one
the
you
years.
actually-
as paid consultants to other cannabis
This is the
businesses.
first time developing our own.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, we're talking about hydroponics?
So
Or is
technically,
it gonna be grown in the soil, like?
it's gonna be a soil, so it's considered soilless medium, but it is
Okay.
the husk of the coconut, so cocoa core.
Why the unmarked vehicles?
Um,
That's state law.
Yeah,
It
it's a
is.
state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's diversion prevention. The states are very particular about signage, and they certainly don't want people driving around in cars that have big potholes on the back.
There is a sign on the door.
Yeah, certainly, as long as it doesn't include any, logos of the plant or caricatures or anything like that, if it's not, indicative necessarily of cannabis, it's okay for signage.
Good question.
Is the product testing done on-site, is it done off-site, who does the product testing?
But so
Transferred back and forth is.
formally, so nothing's gonna come back to the facility. We were required to send a certain amount out to the testing facility and we test for potency and contaminants there. We will likely be testing our own product because it's expensive. So, if there's a problem with a crop, before we were to send it to a testing lab, you'd wanna know that ahead of time. So there is a fair amount of testing that's done inside the facility itself.
Required off-site.
Independent testing, awesome.
That's
Yes,
right.
that's right. State-
Before you
state
can
license.
market anything for sale, has to be tested.
I'm just curious, what is the current zoning for that location?
IG, industrial general,
Okay, so it's not agriculture.
is
No.
not.
Interesting. So is this considered an industrial use or is it considered an agricultural use?
It is considered an industrial use.
Is it?
It is,
It's a 20,000 square foot facility and it's industrial?
yes.
That's
Um,
interesting.
State of
Is
Mass,
that interesting? I find that interesting.
the state, it is, and we find it interesting also because a lot of the regulatory around these facilities is geared towards, the fact that it's an adult use product, okay? Even though it's an agricultural process, the state has not characterized it as such. So when we perform our design and the building is constructed, the checks and balances that are used come out of what they consider light industrial manufacturing. And because they see it as this started as a pharmaceutical process, it is seen as a pharmaceutical process, and it was considered an industrial facility.
By the way, what you said is DGG told us that was agriculture, wasn't industrial, because that's where they're going, is in agriculture. I know, it's nothing to do with you folks, but that's why we're chuckling, because it's like, one bill is, it's
I understand.
manufacturing, the other is, it's
I do understand,
agriculture.
and there is a process here
No.
that both companies have to go through And, you know, I know there's a comparison going on here. That is not our intent. We're just trying to tell you about our business, how it's going to operate, and we want to answer all your questions properly.
So, have you gotten a ruling from our zoning folks, that this is an okay use?
Well, there was a question about the retail because the prior use of the building in the last business that was in there was George's business, and it was a distribution location for wholesale auto parts. The use prior to that, I don't know if you all remember, but it was a lumberyard. And so there's a fair amount of traffic in and out of there, and we thought that you know, precedent gave us the ability to propose that use again on the same site.
You have one question then over there.
That air handling unit on the back, how much noise is that?
So that, the reason that we would put that in the back, that equipment is, it's a shorter distance from the fuel to the equipment. The equipment we're proposing to use would be a chiller system, and they are typically very noisy. These particular chillers happen to be less noisy. They're designed differently, and they run on gas. Now, as far as decibel audio, you're not going to hear those chillers outside of the enclosure that we build, and that's why we would.
We're going to be inside of the building.
Right.
Yeah, it's not gonna be open, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get you some specs if you can email us, we can find out what the machine runs.
We're happy to share.
What it would be on the other
We're
side
happy to
of the
share
side
as
there.
much information
Yeah.
as our neighbors are willing to listen to, okay? Some of this is very boring, and I know it's not, you know, you don't all care about what we're talking about here, so I appreciate your patience.
Got a question?
So you seem to have done a lot of research on this. Why did you choose Charlton?
For the reasons that I said earlier, I do spend a lot of time in Charlton. My wife is from Southbridge, her whole family lives there. This is local to me. I live 15 to 20 minutes away. And it's, I see a lot of people coming into this industry building huge facilities. And my honest opinion is that suits a lot of people just fine. But I believe that the size of this town and the size of this facility are appropriate. And I like the idea of being able to sell to my customers what I grew, okay? And first and foremost, I'm a medical cannabis patient. I didn't think I was gonna get you know, tell you guys this today. But last week, I was, you know, on my back. I slipped a disc in my lower back. That's the third one in my lower back. And I have two in my neck from a car accident. I'm a patient first and foremost. And what I'd like you to all keep in mind is that, you know, why I do this is because I want the product to be a lower cost to the patient. And to do that, unfortunately, you use recreational sales because the product's wildly popular. You're gonna sell a lot of it, and it offsets the cost for the medical patient. It is absolutely a tool. The state doesn't want a bunch of people running around using pot. Okay, they really don't. But they know that regulating that is going to lower numbers in crime related to that. It is also going to offset the cost for medical patients' use. So in Connecticut, where I live, I pay $60 for an eighth of whatever I would buy in flour. I tend to buy oils and things like that because they're healthier, okay? But, you know, without the bigger business coming in and offsetting that cost, the systems that we're gonna put in this building, I mean, you heard how much we would have to put into this building to develop. It's $200 to $300 a square foot for construction. There are very few technical spaces that require that type of investment to do it right. And I've seen people do it wrong. And those people are just kicking the can down the road, and they're continuing to cost that large amount of money. They're continuing that high cost for their patient. We believe that through energy efficient design and progressive thought in the way these facilities are designed, this eventually lowers the cost. We're raising the bar. We're lowering the cost of the product for the patient. And yes, there's going to be a time where it is just like a gas station floor. That price is going to go through the floor, and you can see that in Colorado and Washington and Oregon. But we believe if these facilities are designed properly, that it is a healthier business and it's better for the customer.
Back there?
I have a question about the edibles, like, what would this stuff kind of look like? I had a colleague who worked in Colorado, which is also there. And when this became legal, it was really a huge problem in the emergency room.
Mhm.
The kids were getting pulled up, the parents would buy stuff with gummy bears and chocolate bars and thinking it's candy. And so, I know that there's different kinds of edibles, but you know, is there a plan? I would
Yeah.
rather not
Yeah,
see
go for it.
those kinds of things.
Well, so I understand that that's a prevalent problem in new markets, and you're gonna have a certain number of cases where that's gonna be an issue. We actually will not manufacture edible products. There's plenty of people in the state that are going to produce those. We may provide those for our patients through the dispensary, but that would be through some other facility. We actually don't intend to create them.
And the state's very particular about the type and the form that you can produce, you know, and I think it's that you can't do anything that would resemble a commercially available candy. So that's the standard that they've set at the state level. So
I think the packaging is specific too.
Very.
yeah, the packaging has to be opaque.
Very.
You know, it's very basic.
And Massachusetts has put a lot of thought into, you know, this program in that regard. You're going to find that a lot of new states that will adopt medical and adult use cannabis legislation will look to Massachusetts for, you know, the same things they looked to Colorado for when they started their program. So these programs get better and better as time goes on and people see what works and what doesn't.
And we're seeing New York has already, you know, endorsed our models, in particular our social equity program that Massachusetts is first in the nation in implementing. So, you know, Massachusetts will be a model for across the country, we think.
Good question.
The potency and the efficacy and the contaminated stuff that you said about metals, who is defining that for you at the labs? It's not in the USP, you were saying it's a drug, is it something that's in like the FDA, like?
No.
Yeah. The
So,
state is, right?
so the State Department of Health, Department of Public Health, looks at, you know, the health risks, you know, that occur with the different types of contamination that can happen.
Is it different across states?
Oh yeah, it's very different. In fact, in the state of Massachusetts, they have the lowest residual solvent numbers allowable, and it takes almost twice as much time to produce certain products in the laboratory for the program in the state of Massachusetts than it does in Colorado. So it is incredibly expensive to pass those results, and that cost is passed on to the patient.
So you're going to be doing some of the testing in-house, all of the
Some,
testing?
just routine QA as we manufacture.
We want to make sure, I mean, if you're gonna put
Yeah.
$1 million worth of product out on the market, you want to have some inclination before you pay somebody thousands of dollars to test that for you, whether or not you have to pay that. So if it's contaminated, it's just going to get thrown out the room.
I'm just thinking some of those extraction techniques are really technical, right? It's like, and
This
you need
is-
this big lab, you might need a little lab facility within there, which is,
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
But really, the true testing, the real testing happens at the
Yeah,
state licensed
The
lab.
regulatory level testing is elsewhere.
Right, and
We're
ours
just
is
doing QC
more of
work
a,
on,
to make sure
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
on the right track.
We're not verifying our own product
No.
for sale.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely not.
And it's a sample that goes, it's not the whole.
It is,
It
but
is a sample.
it's a large.
It's a representative, it's a regulated, you know,
And everything is done in batches, so, you know, when you actually track the product, you're tracking this as, you know, these 20 plants. So everything that comes out of that, they've all been grown in the same conditions, in the same rooms, dried in the same rooms, and then you send a small portion of that batch.
Yes, ma'am.
How long is, from the inception of the plant until you can, sell it?
Hold the time on that.
So,
Early 2020 is the.
No, she's just talking generally. I
Yes.
think it's about 4 months. Is that right, Kurt?
yeah, from, you're saying, I was
Oh,
gonna see
okay,
the
I
timeline.
heard-
No,
But from,
just generally
120
speaking.
days.
yeah, it's about 120 days to produce a crop.
Yeah.
And we, you know, that varies a little bit, and we hope to produce 4 to 5 crops a year from each room.
Yeah.
everything. I was just curious, since, do other towns consider this industrial?
The state actually considers.
Well, it varies, frankly. It's all over the map. You know, at the local zoning level, in Massachusetts, towns enjoy a lot of authority to regulate what happens within their boundaries. So it's really up to the municipality to determine. We've seen it. You know, a lot of towns have lumped this into healthcare uses. Some have put them in industrial uses. Some have put them now in just general retail uses. So it's really runs the gamut across the state.
Since people have been asking about the agricultural versus the industrial, I can give you a little information on what that process was. So when BGG came looking to site in an agricultural area, the first question was, does the town of Charlton have any bylaws restricting or saying where does it go? And that answer was no. We didn't have any bylaws. For a long time, there was questions about whether or not we should have bylaws, and through the planning board, and comments from and determinations from the town planner at the time, it didn't appear necessary. So if you don't have bylaws, then what do you do next? Then what you do next is you go and look at what is in your bylaw, in your zoning, that is most like the operation. And the determination was that these were greenhouses and that they were agricultural. So when it's been very difficult because people have been looking at the agricultural component, where the agricultural component of the state says it does not enjoy the agricultural exemptions and tax exemptions under Chapter 61. So they don't get that, but they are still the use of what they're doing was determined by the zoning enforcement officer that they were greenhouses and they were allowed in the agricultural district. And that's how it ended up here in that area. Now, we have asked for clarification from the state, certainly in the area of 61A, and we've gotten some mixed messages there. We've asked them to put that in writing. We have asked our attorneys whether or not they are allowed in agriculture. I have been told, yes, that makes sense. They're greenhouses, and that's where the determination comes from. So, under your bylaw, Article 27, I think there's certain areas that it allows. And I guess in talking about that bylaw, I would say thank you very much for this presentation, and I also appreciate your explanation as to why you chose to put everything in tonight, because as you know, there is a petition to rescind Article 27, and if Article 27 is rescinded, then they would be able to go forward because there would be no limits as to where these growers would go. So that is how it ended up with agriculture. It's based on greenhouses.
Other questions?
Tomorrow night, you're doing the same presentation?
Maybe slightly modified, but yes.
Oh, only because I didn't get a notice, there was a letter
Just-
about it just arrived.
Yeah.
And the meeting I only saw was today's paper. Was it today's, was it posted before then?
Honestly, I had no idea this was occurring.
So we post, per the state guidelines, we notified via certified mail, and unfortunately you have to sign for certified mail, so I think that was the delay there. But we notified abutters within 300 feet, which the list we got from the town records with certified mail. We also published formal notice in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, and then we also posted notices in the town hall here. So those are the sort of the 3 steps required by the town in order to notice for a public meeting such as this. I believe the Telegram and Gazette also ran another piece on it maybe this morning.
Yeah, that's the first time I saw it, so I didn't notice it before. Because I'm thinking if it's put, a lot more people will be watching it, the selectmen's meeting than are probably here. So it'll be a lot bigger audience hearing what's going on.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda, I'll post it up, right,
For Wednesday night. pretty sure it's at the 18th.
No, we're not on the planning board
No,
agenda.
the planning board is,
Um,
The selectmen meeting.
I believe it's
17th.
tomorrow night.
Yeah, I believe it's tomorrow.
So tomorrow night is the petition, the board of selectmen will be taking up the petition to rescind Article 27. And they also have Fourscore on their agenda, as they said, to come in and meet them. So just to be clear, the community meeting is a meeting that these guys are required to have. It is not in conjunction. The board, through me, did invite them to actually have this community meeting tomorrow night at the board of selectmen's meeting because we thought it would get more viewing and interest. But we are taking it and it will be played out. But I will, since you changed your mind from what you told me, I need to go change my memos to the board and let them know that you didn't drop the retailing of the board and coming back and asking for that. So I'll make sure that the board is aware of your change. And I'm gonna assume that you probably go through this with them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it will be on the TV, so people will be able to see it.
Mhm. Other questions? That's that, and I want to thank you all very, very much. We can stay up here for one-on-one, or however it works, and if anyone would like materials, email them to materials email, just give us your email address, et cetera, et cetera.
We're happy
We want to
to.
be as open a book as we possibly can be as to process.
And thank you all very
Thank
much.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.